Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 14 of the Giro d'Italia 2023. Today's stage, 195 kilometers, thereabouts, so about 120 miles in length. One big old climb there, about 35 kilometers from the start of today's race. It's going to finish at 140 kilometers to go. It's going to be a long descent all the way into the flat roads, and then it's going to be about 100K all the way into the finish, where once we start getting into about 50 kilometers to go, it just starts getting lumpy and bumpy throughout the finish of today's stage. Lots of lefts, rights, roundabouts, forests, towns, everything in the last 50 kilometers of today's stage. So it's definitely not flat. Even coming up to the line, the last 1K, it's going to be a slight drag going up to the line. I call it probably about 4%, 3%. It's not a climb by any means, but it's definitely a little bit stiff up to about 600 meters. Then it'll ease off and just go into a small 1-2% into the line. So still uphill drag as we finish today's stage 14. Now let's rewind the tape a little bit, talk a little bit about yesterday's stage 13 when we're talking about that shortened stage. Okay, there was all kinds of drama, and it was Adam Hansen, that is the union rep for the European cyclists, that was given a bit of an interview earlier on the GCN channel. Now, he said what was basically causing the problems is that the organizers are saying that they wanted an answer the night before. And then if you go all the way back to stage 10, really the riders wanted to shorten that stage too, but the organizers had them race. They went through that stage. It was really cold. It was a spectacular stage finish and big time battles, and I was happy they did stage 10. Honestly, when we looked at yesterday's stage 13 and heard that it wasn't snowing over the top of the climb, that it was just wet, I think they should have raced yesterday's stage 13. But Adam Hansen, he says the whole thing is the organizers didn't want to change the stage last minute, and so they really wanted answers the night before. When they looked the night before, it was going to be freezing conditions at the top. So when all the riders talked to each other, they agreed that they would shorten the stage, and then the organizers won the last two climbs. Again, sitting up here on the Butterfly Effect where it's warm and cozy, I'm saying, and throughout my career, 25 years of racing, I've never asked for a stage to be canceled because it was raining. If it was blowing hailstorms or something like that and snowing and your tires aren't going to hold traction because it's slippery and icy, once it becomes icy, I think you need to change the course. Once it becomes wind that's going to blow you off the race, I think you need to change the course. If you're just going to be cold, well, I've been very, very cold throughout my career, and I've still never asked for the stage to be canceled. Now, there's one more interview I want to bring up. It's from Garrett Horner, and he starts talking about all the riders from the 80s and 90s who are making these comments saying, hey, you have to suffer through these stages. He's saying, well, we don't do those things that they did back in the 80s and 90s, so we're proud of that, so they can say whatever they want. Well, let me just remind Garrett Horner that he rides for Team Sky. And when we're talking about the latest issues of having doping problems in the sport, Team Sky is always at the top of the list, right? So maybe Garrett Horner, talking about the riders from the 80s and 90s, should look at his own team because his own directors driving the cars back there come from the 80s and 90s. And so when he says that, and Adam Blythe from GCN basically pats him on the back saying what a great thing to say and great way to say it, I'm up here saying, man, you're just living in a little bit different times, Garrett Horner, because Team Sky, when we're talking about here in the later 2000s, you talk about 2012 and all that stuff, when all the problems started coming out, it was Team Sky when all the teams were changing the ways, and Team Sky was doing all the little extra benefits that they can get out of it to have their riders riding the best they possibly could. So when Garrett Horner says this, then I see Robin McEwen talk about how he dropped the mic today. I'm here to say up on the Butterfly Effect, I don't really appreciate that comment. Garrett Horner, with the internet, availability of the internet, it's changed the whole world of cycling, made doping a lot harder for riders to do, and the drug testing has got a tons better. And so Garrett Horner, at this late point in time in his career, he doesn't have to make those decisions anymore because it's too much of a risk nowadays to really get into that deep doping that followed the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and certainly the Sky days back there in the day, because, you know, testosterone patches weren't just getting mailed all around Europe for no reason whatsoever. But whatever you want to say, Garrett Horner, I don't agree with it, and I don't agree with Adam Blythe saying what a fantastic way to say it, or Robert McEwen talking about how he dropped the mic here today. Either way, let's get into the bike racing now and start checking out some of the details that are happening. Like I said, it's a 195-kilometer stage. They're going to start racing right away, and of course, we're going to start seeing techs. It's Lawrence Rex Intermarché, this rider that's going up the road early here on stage 14 of the Giro, and then all of a sudden, everything gets brought back. Small little calm period before we see a group of 18 riders going up the road. Trek Segafredo have 2 riders in this group. I'm going to bring up Trek Segafredo specifically because in a group of 18 on this stage 14 with one huge climb just starting here pretty soon with 35 kilometers into the race, you know Trek Segafredo with 18 riders have to be pretty happy as a team to have 2 riders in this front group. Now we look back in the peloton. Who's tacking? It's Tom Squinch from Trek Segafredo that's lighting up the group back there. Let me show you the time gap. It's only about 25-30 seconds to his teammates in that group of 18. I don't like this move at all. It's about 12-14 riders back there, and you have 2 guys on the general classification. Our Ensman there from Ineos is represented, and Bora Hansgrohe have Leonard Kamna. Now this has got the red alert signs going off all over the place for Jumbo-Visma, who had a bunch of riders kind of hanging out at the back through the early part of this stage. Now they got 2-3 riders on the front, and they're pulling as hard as they can to bring this back because Leonard Kamna's in the top 10 and our Ensman's in the top 10. And if this group of 12-14 can get up to a group of 18, the last thing Jumbo-Visma want on stage 14 after racing perfect tactics throughout this whole Giro is to lose it 2 weeks into the race and be on the front chasing more than 30 guys up the road. So with that, we'll look at this group here with Trek Segafredo, Tom Squinch and the GC favorites, and we see everyone kind of arguing a little bit there with our Ensman. They're clearly telling him he needs to drop out, and Leonard Kamna is going to have to drop out with him too. We see the Ineos train going through the right bend there and look just up in front of him as we see our Ensman dropping out from Ineos along with Leonard Kamna. Now, that's going to open up different strategies now. I told you I didn't like Tom Squinch's move. I thought that was a knucklehead move and not professional to be jumping when you had 2 riders in the move. Now he gets lucky with these 2 GC riders coming out, and all of a sudden we got a group of 9 riders going up the road. Trek Segafredo's in there with Tom Squinch. Like I said, got a couple Movistar riders in there, which is a good thing because up in the front group, they got Gaviria, their sprinter. So if these 2 groups can get together, Movistar will have 3 riders up there, Trek Segafredo will have 3 riders, and a bunch of other teams got multiple numbers because this group's going to get large pretty soon. We look back as the peloton's going curb to curb. We see Iola come to the left side of the road and they want out. We see the Ineos rider look over to his left. He's having a little conversation with those guys. He doesn't like what he's seeing here. Then the 2 Iola Cometa riders will start to ride off the front of the group. They both look at each other. Baez is looking over at Mastri, and Mastri's looking over at Baez. They look back, and now they're going to throw down the gauntlet here because they got a little bit of gap on the peloton. Well, this is a good strategy right here because they got 1 rider up the road, and it's Baez, Davide Baez, so his brother wants to join him. Those 2 riders will start chasing full gas. Then with about 150 kilometers to go, all 3 groups will come together. 29 riders will be in this front group. We'll see Movistar setting some tempo going up this one and only massive climb here on stage 14 to control the pace so they can get their sprinter Gaviria down the hill and through the flats and into the finish here at stage 4 with a shot of winning the sprint if they can keep it all together. As we come up to the KOM sprint, we're going to see one more knucklehead here today as it's Bruno Armai. Bruno Armai, who's the threat on the general classification, just under 19 minutes behind Ineos leader Geraint Thomas of Team Ineos. He's up here battling, but he's pulling with 400 or 500 meters to go up to the KOM, and on his wheel, he's got Davide Baez. Let me remind you, Bruno Armai, you got your team leader back there in the peloton, Pinot, who tried to win yesterday's stage but fell apart doing a bunch of knucklehead tactics throughout yesterday's stage, going up the first climb, pulling all the way down the descent with everybody chasing him, pulling along the flats, and then, of course, tacking 20 times up the climb just to give it away at the finish. Well, Bruno Armai is the next knucklehead on FDJ as he's pulling right here with Davide Baez sitting on his wheel. They'll come up to about 200 meters to go, and Davide Baez will just pass Bruno Armai, no problem, after he's pulled for a few hundred meters, and then takes maximum points for the KOM jersey for Iolo Cometa to put himself in the KOM lead after the end of today's stage, pushing Thibaut Pinot down to second. That was a knucklehead move right there. Now, the group's going over the top of the climb. They got tons of time, 6, 7, 8 minutes on the peloton behind, who's coming up this final climb real easy like. Going down the descent, this is when the riders are going to suffer the most. here in today's stage 14 as it's raining and miserable out. We'll see Bruno Armai off the back chasing the group a few times. Don't exactly know what happened here, but he will get back up to that front group. When we look at the peloton behind, getting led down the descent, we see it's Jumbo-Visma taking quality care here of their race leader, Primož Roglič, as they stay at the front of the peloton here, keeping him out of trouble. Now, once they get down on the bottom, this is when things slow down in the race. If you're interested in watching the race, you want to watch from kilometer 0 all the way up to this KOM. Then after that, you can take a big nap. You want to tune the race back in at about 62 kilometers to go, because this is when all of a sudden it starts getting interesting. Now, the gap to the breakaway riders of 29 up here is sitting at about 13 minutes, so Bruno Armai has no chance at this moment taking the race lead's pink jersey here at stage 14 of the Giro from Geraint Thomas. But things are going to change with 62 kilometers to go, and then it's going to start becoming a nail-biter here at the finish. As we see Alberto Bettiol attack, this is exactly what Bruno Armai needs. The last thing he wants is to have no attacks and keep this pace of 29 riders just rotating through smooth who don't care about the general classification. Remember, once guys start attacking, nobody that doesn't care about the general classification but does care about the stage, they got to go full gas and go as fast as anybody's going that's attacking up the road. With the attack of Alberto Bettiol from EF Education, he'll get some company in the form of Bora Hansgrohe's Nico Dens. Nico Dens is on flying form. He's already won a stage just 2 days ago here at the Giro as he flies up here to Alberto Bettiol. Behind, we see it's Trek Segafredo on the front pulling. It's Mollema. Bach Mollema will come through these two guys, throwing an attack of his own, but then that'll get brought back quickly as he didn't get much of a gap. Things start getting interesting as we start seeing the attack of 3 riders with about 55 kilometers to go. It's Davide Ballerini, Stefano Dani, and Lawrence Rex from Intermarché. Lawrence Rex was the first rider to attack here on stage 14. Now he's in a group of 3, and this looks solid with about 55 kilometers to go as all 3 riders are pulling 100%. Look back in the peloton. Look back in what looks like the peloton, but is actually the breakaway riders here on stage 14. It's Tom Squinch. Trek Segafredo, he's throwing in an attack. I'm sitting on the Chesterfield. Tom Squinch, you're already knucklehead pulling back that group of 18 with 2 riders. There's no way you're going to bridge across to these 3 riders up the road when they're pulling 100% up there with quality riders, and you're coming across solo trying to bridge a 20-25 second gap to these guys. Then the cameras move up forward. What happens? Well, we look up front, and it's Ballerini up there looking at his computer, playing with it and adjusting it. Then we look just behind him. Lawrence Rex has taken off one of his many layers of jackets. So I just changed my mind as I'm sitting on the Chesterfield. Tom Squinch, you got a great chance. Throw down, boy. You can make it. Well, it doesn't take him too long. About 2 kilometers, he'll bridge the gap from the breakaway riders back there at the start of the day all the way up to these front group of 3. Now we got 4 riders, and they are flying on the front. Tom Squinch looks exceptionally good here on stage 14, doing big-time pulls. Ballerini's at the front. He's doing solid pull. Lawrence Rex has looked phenomenal throughout this stage 14. He looks perfect here with still 50 kilometers to go. And then we look at Stefano Oldani. He looks solid up there too. I'm thinking, wow, this gap, 30 seconds, starts bridging up to 40 seconds. I think they might be gone if there's not some real chemistry in the back there to chase these guys down. Every time we look back there, we see it's Movistar on the front with Bahrain Victorious doing big-time pulls. Bahrain Victorious have their sprinter, Andres Pasqualon, back there, and he's being led at the front there by Sutherland. Sutherland's doing big-time pulls as hard as he can. Finally, after some big efforts from Sutherland, he'll blow and go back, but they'll get some more help at the front of the peloton as all of a sudden Israel Premier Tech put a guy on the front, and now they're drilling it too. Without the Bahrain Victorious, though, you still only got 2 teams chasing, and there's 4 guys up the road. So it's pretty even odds, more in favor of the 4 up the front because they got a lot to gain and they can win the stage. Behind, though, whoever's pulling, remember, they're pulling for their sprinter. Talking about Gaviria, Fernando Gaviria, the 2 Movistar riders throwing in everything they can. Once Israel Premier Tech gets up there with Williams, though, things start getting a little closer, but there's still about 40, 50 seconds to those front guys. Sometimes the gap will come down to 30, sometimes it extend back up, but now things are getting crazy in this finish, this last 40, 35 kilometers to go. This is when there's just turns, lefts, roundabouts, turns all over the place. The road has been miserable since they went all the way up over the KOM at 140 kilometers to go, and it's not much better down here. Now, every time we look at the break, Lawrence Rex has taken off another layer of clothing. When he took off his first jacket at about 50 kilometers to go, when Tom Squinch was coming up, I told you he had more. Well, we'll see him at 43 kilometers to go as he's taking off his second rain jacket. He's still got more layers on there. He's still wearing a vest. Once they get a little bit further into the race at 25K to go, we see him taking off his vest. How many layers do you got on, Lawrence Rex? As we see all the layers are finally come off, these guys are throwing down. Now we see in the back, though, with 17 kilometers to go, as they're coming into the forest, it starts getting really interesting because in the back, we see it's Derek G, Israel Premier Tech, who put his team on the front, Williams, pulling hard. Now Derek G is throwing down. He's got about 9, 10, 11 guys back there hanging on for dear life as Derek G is doing big-time pulls back there. Look about 8 spots back there. That's Nico Dins from Bora Hansgrohe, who won 2 stages ago. He's been on flying form, doing big-time pulls now at the front here with Derek G. Now we get into 11 kilometers to go. They're going up this hard, stiff bump, and we'll see it up then the group of 4 as Lawrence Rex, his legs are finally blown off, even though he's gotten rid of all of his layers. The Intermarché riders dropping out of this group of 4, leaving 3 riders at the front who are pulling 100% as hard as they can. Once they go into the left slippery turn up front, we see it's Mayhoff from DSM in that chase group, and then we see Derek G back there. This will split off as 2 more riders will come up to the front in the form of Nico Dins and Alberto Bettiol to make 4 riders chasing 3 riders up front, because let me remind you, Derek G just got popped. As they'll start to wrap up Derek G with about 8 kilometers to go, now you got 5 chasing 3. We go under 2 kilometers to go, and the group of 5 back there got the group of 3 in sight, but they're still about 15, maybe 12 seconds behind. It's a stretch to call it 12, but they're close enough to maybe bring it back if the guys up front could hesitate a little bit, or if Nico Dins back there, the Bora Hansgrohe rider, could do some more big pulls. Now we go under 1K to go. This is when we start seeing a little bit of tactical games up front with the group of 3. As we see Stefano Aldani, Albacin de Koenig come under the 1K sign. 900 meters to go. He moves over to the left side of the road. Look over to the right. That's Ballerini sitting second position, maybe first if you want to call it that. Tom Squinge on his wheel. And then Ballerini's going to look back. Once he does, I think over on the left side, Stefano Aldani saw that and he threw in his attack with 900 meters to go. As he's throwing in his attack, look at the group of 5. They're getting close. They're about 10 seconds, 7 seconds back there, getting even closer. Now all of a sudden we see Tom Squinge. He comes straight by Davide Ballerini because he's worried about that gap. We look with 600 meters to go. Tom Squinge has brought back Stefano Aldani with Davide Ballerini on his wheel. But look just behind that. It's Nico Dins pulling the group. He's going 100%. The Bora Hansgrohe rider trying to close this gap. 400 meters to go. He closes the gap up to the group of 3 in front. Now all of a sudden we got 8 riders here coming into the finish with 500 meters to go. Now 350 meters to go. Just as Nico Dins was closing that gap, just from behind Alberto Bettiol, EF Education, he'll throw in his attack. Nico Dins will follow it directly right away. Then we'll see just behind Nico Dins over to the side, Israel Premier Tech. That's Derek G back there, who's gone top 2 already here at the Giro d'Italia a couple times as he's trying to win today's stage 14 with 200 meters to go. Just as Nico Dins was coming up to the right side there of Alberto Bettiol, he moves over to the left and Nico Dins just stays on the accelerator all the way into the line. As we see Derek G, he's on his wheel solid with about 50 meters to go. Derek G starts throwing in acceleration. 10 meters to go. Nico Dins, Bora Hansgrohe sitting up, starting to celebrate. As he crosses the line, he's slapping Derek G in the face. Looks a little bit over to his right side and realizes he still won by half a wheel. So he keeps his celebration going all the way across the line. In the interviews afterwards, we'll see Derek G says he's tired of getting second places here, which is kind of a little bit funny because a few stages back, well, in his first second place, he was absolutely ecstatic. Now, after a few second places later, Derek G's not. Third on the stage, Alberto Bettiol, EF Education across the line. Now, what happened back there in terms of the fight for the general classification? Well, Bruno Armai, with all of this aggressive racing from 62 kilometers to go, he was in the 3rd group back there. That at 17 kilometers to go, all of a sudden it looked like he had a shot of being in the pink jersey at the end of today's race. Well, 5 kilometers to go, you look, he's the virtual leader here of the Giro d'Italia on stage 14, and when he crosses the line in his group, he's suffering maximum, even losing a few seconds to his mates up there. Will finish about 53 seconds down on the stage winner Nico Dins. But when we look at the peloton behind, they're not racing full gas. And even it's the teammate Thibaut Pinot of Bruno Armai, who's crashing off to the left side of the road or having a bike change. Either way, he's got a teammate there that'll get him on the bike, as we see Bruno Armai waiting in the hot seat to figure out whether or not if he's going to be in pink at the end of the day. Well, when the peloton finally crosses the finish line, they're way back, about 21 minutes down on the stage winner. So that'll put Bruno Armai from FDJ in the pink race leader's jersey with about a minute and 40-second lead on Geraint Thomas. Other than that, throughout the top 10 didn't change a whole lot, but we do change the pink jersey. So that's a pretty big jump here on stage 14. Now, what's this mean going forward when we start talking about 15 when FDJ is in the race leader's jersey? It's what everybody wants to know, really. Well, it's confused a lot of things. I don't believe we're going to see FDJ ride for Bruno Armai at all throughout tomorrow's stage. So I think you could see attacks going all day long. Most likely an attack will go all the way to the finish. But I think the general classification favorites, at some point in time, there might be some kind of interesting drama finding out whether or not if Jumbo-Visma will pull to defend the race leader's pink jersey, or, of course, if Ineos will pull to get the race leader's pink jersey back, because we don't know at this moment if Jumbo-Visma want pink or if Ineos want pink tomorrow. Maybe they're just comfortable letting the break go away again, and who knows, maybe the jersey will change hands after tomorrow's stage 15 to someone other than a GC favorite again. And then when we start getting into the big mountains, when we're talking about after tomorrow's stage into the big mountains, now, of course, the pink is going to have to fight. But when we look at tomorrow's stage, again, because we're in the Lombardy region, these climbs are really hard. This could be the stage that we start seeing all of the Giro favorites really battling with each other up these climbs. Remember, back a few stages ago, all the way back on stage 8, Primoz Roglic lit it up on that little climb to put time into Remco Evenepoel, and that was starting to see the first GC battles. I think we're going to see that tomorrow. The first big GC battle done here and tomorrow on stage 15, and I think we'll see Bruno Armai out of the pink jersey when it's all said and done, and possibly the breakaway going all the way to the finish. But the interesting story, who will defend the jersey for tomorrow? FDJ, will they defend it? Or will Ineos try to take it back? Or Jumbo-Visma try to drop G. Thomas somewhere on one of these hard climbs? Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next edition real soon.